Yes. So I absolutely agree. I think you left on a lot of questions, and the whole aspect about what you spoke of colonizing certain, not certain aspects. I'll say a whole system of education, and education is what is supposed to shape a child into for a future. And if that won't, it's a very systematic issue that you addressed. And I think given the fact that Canada and India share both that experience very very well, and have adopted that aspect quite intrinsically, if I may put it like that, I think it's a very valid topic, and most importantly very provoking questions that you have asked us towards the end. So I open the floor to not the floor I open the screen to all our participants, who will, of course, I'm sure a lot of them are waiting to engage with you as well, based on the questions that you had asked. And of course, for further questions, I like to remind the audience that there is an activities button on the top, right next to the chat icon, on the top right corner, which you can use, post your questions, so that we can have a very heart-to-heart discussion with Erin. Yes. So we have some questions coming in. But before that, I have just a query of my own, and how the model that you had presented to us, I mean, yes, the session was quite relaxing, but then did you do a lot of trial and error before coming to that model, or is that something that you had already, let's say, found via a lot of research or aspects and then implemented?
Yeah, that model came about because my own personal studies in education with children and even adult education, I noticed that the models that we were using, particularly with children, they were very adult-centered. So it was, as a teacher, if I want this particular outcome, this is the learning model to bring about that outcome. And because I felt really passionate about natural learning, learning when you are intrinsically motivated to learn, I started to really pay attention to the models that I was coming across. Adult learning models tap into that internal motivation style more often than child learning models. And as we were, it's also based in experience. So after years of offering self-directed education style programming and learning, we noticed that, when children are moving through this self-directed learning process, we don't have to inspire them to learn.
I see.
It's happening all the time. And that sense of shine was just so obvious. And I noticed as a teacher, someone who's taught in a conventional classroom, that's very rare in a conventional classroom, to see a child feeling that sense of shine so deeply. And it happens so regularly in more natural, self-directed education learning environments. So Chelsea, with her research, at University of Victoria, she was sort of looking into what sort of natural learning models are out there. We couldn't find one that really sort of brought the learning back into feelings and that sense of belonging. A lot of them were sort of only in your head. And so the learning model came about because of experience, looking at what already was available to us as researchers and educators. And Chelsea and I are in the process of having that model published.
All right. With that, I would also like to welcome Chelsea, who has joined us for this. Thank you so much for participating. I know it's quite early over there.
I am so sorry,
Chelsea
everyone.
And Erin, for joining.
Thank you for such a gracious welcoming. I'm on Pacific Standard Time, and so Erin and I are already 3 hours apart. And for some reason, I thought that it started at 4:30. So I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. This was so very important to me, and I can't believe that I'm late. I cannot believe that I'm late. I'm so sorry.
So actually, Erin had very well engaged. She had conducted a short activity, a much relaxing activity, I must say. I mean, I definitely enjoyed that.
Great.
It's almost evening in India, so definitely we have had quite a busy day already ahead. So we really needed that. And Chelsea, there are some questions that are coming in. So Erin and Chelsea, whoever's comfortable, we would definitely love to have your insights on those questions. So I'll
Sure.
present the first one that is shared by Miss Salvage, asking, how does the feeling of belonging feel? And if you can define it in certain terms.
Would you mind repeating that question? My internet cut out just
Yes.
as you were saying it.
Yes. So she's asking, how does the feeling of belonging feel like, and what if you can define it? How would it be?
Feeling of belonging. Chelsea, I would love for you to share your understanding of belonging also, but maybe I'll start this question myself. That feeling of belonging, for me, it feels like a deep sense of trust in myself. It's not second guessing my needs. It's having a deep understanding of what my needs are, deeply valuing my needs. Doesn't mean that I'll always be able to meet my needs, but recognizing how valuable they are. And that sense of belonging, sometimes it's really difficult to have a sense of belonging in certain environments. So I'm maybe not always vocal or sharing what my needs are with others. Maybe sometimes I decide to keep my needs to myself for a while and observe. But that sense of belonging really starts in me and valuing myself and where I'm at. Chelsea, would you like to add anything?
Sure. I guess for me, where the idea has come about is understanding that much of the work that we've been doing, over the last, for myself and for Erin and I say, over the last 5 years together, we've been looking a lot at like, what are the human conditions that are necessary for people to feel safe and connected and to learn optimally. And there's a lot of language here in Canada around inclusion and looking at ways to make sure that everybody is being given the right to participate. And I use the word right because it's slightly different than this idea of belonging that we're talking about. So a lot of times with inclusion, we're looking at this idea of like, this is like a moral obligation of everybody's to include everybody in this space. But belonging is much different. Like a felt sense of belonging, just for me, just saying the word belonging feels different in my body. I don't know for any of you, but when I think about what it feels like to belong, this means not that I have the right to be here, not that, okay, you guys have opened the door and you've said you're here and we have to have you here, but also that I'm seen, that I feel that I'm not just that I'm brought to the table, but that I'm actually seen and heard and valued, and that I feel safe and dignified. So these are different feelings, because when I feel that I belong somewhere, I feel good and I feel ready to show up and be the best version of myself. And that's much different than, in my opinion, that's much different than if someone just said, okay, sure, we're going to let you here because everybody said that you're supposed to be here. It looks and feels a lot different. So this idea of belonging that Erin and I have come to is, we just understand it to be a lot more of like a universal human condition. We all need to feel that we belong, and it doesn't, it all the senses, it engages the senses in a totally different way, because I don't know, if you're supposed to be somewhere, it, and if maybe not, if the environment has brought you there and they've said, yeah, sure, you can stay, but we're not really going to think about how to get to know you or to see you, it's a very different experience.
I'm on board with that. I think, the whole idea that you both brought out, that like how Erin spoke about how belonging in something could be more extrinsic, and then you spoke about, Chelsea, you spoke about how belonging is also something that is extrinsic. It is not something, because when we think of belonging, we always think of a relationship. It's not necessary. It could be involved with yourself also. That sense of safety, that sense of comfort, that sense of joy that you have, that you that feel connected in that aspect, and you want to be connected in that aspect. I think it is more than just me welcoming somebody. It is more that this person also feels like coming back again and again. So I think that's very beautifully brought out, and the whole aspect that it's a right rather than a formality that one should be doing. It is a basic human value that all of us should be inculcating. I think that stands out. That resonates with quite a lot of us over here.
Thank you.
So, audience, if you want to unmute yourself and present any question, we can do that as well. We do have. Let me just check. Yeah. So we do not have any more questions on the chat box right now. I think you both covered it quite well. So yes. And I think the whole aspect was, how relaxing the whole session was, is something that I think all of us appreciate, like at the end of the day right now over here. And definitely we needed that I can't say a break. I would say rather than that sense of tranquility that Erin, you provided, using that activity. I think that is something that all of us appreciated a lot. Well, I would say. Glad. And I think it was an experience for all of us as well.
Yeah. Well, I think part of our thought, or at least my thought, in sharing that model in that way, it would have been very easy for me to share the model in, a more academic sense and, walked us through the model. But really, if this presentation is about belonging, let's get back into our own sense of selves and back into our feelings. That sense of belonging starts with us. And so it felt like a unique opportunity for all of us to get back into what we're feeling and what we're needing. And especially, like you said, after a full day of work, feeling tired, thinking about evening obligations that you have coming up, that beginning place, that openness, curiosity, that pull. I'm really curious if anyone felt the pull in that moment. Maybe you have to care for children, or you want to connect with a partner or a spouse. That sense of pull might have come up for you in real ways. And I think that's the starting point of belonging, recognizing what your pull might be and finding ways to act on it whenever possible.
All right. So there's one more query that has come up from Chelsea. You can answer it. Miss Selva, she wants to know more about your school and what are the age groups of the children who are attending it.
That's a good question. So I'm not sure how much Erin has shared, but my kids here, well, first of all, their ages are 10, 8, 6, and 3. I have one daughter and 3 sons. And actually, like, nearly 100% inspired by these ideas around my experiences with belonging in the school system. I grew up here in Canada with a single mom. I'm the eldest of 4 myself, and I also am a mixed race person. And so where I grew up, my experience was one that there was not a lot of representation of people who were like me, like families like my own, people who looked like me. And even though I really strove to feel that sense of belonging, I had a really internal desire to feel that I belonged. It didn't really ever feel like that. So this stuff that we're talking about, it definitely is based a lot in lived experience for myself and my siblings. And so when I had my daughter 10 years ago, we actually decided that we weren't going to participate in the school system here. And we have the option here to opt out of school and use home learning. And so our journey has been an option for home education, but with the support of the government in various ways. There's different programs. So my kids are enrolled in a public, what we call distributed learning program. And it really allows for us to sort of tailor all of the learning that the kids are engaging in is really directed by them in a really natural way. And for me, that really sort of solidifies the sense of belonging potential, because one of the things that I remember for myself was that I really just wanted to be seen. I strove for straight A's. I listened, I did all of the things, and I really just wanted my teachers to see me and to understand like who I was and what was going on in my mind. And I really didn't feel it like as one of 30 in a class most of the time. I know that it created inside of me this internal drive for overachieving and trying to get people to see me. And so I really wanted something different for my kids. And so a lot of our daily practices and our approach to learning is one where I really try to slow down and take the time to get to know each of my children as their unique people. And, we spend a lot of time using like a digital portfolio called Seesaw that allows for us to still document their learning and through pictures and journals and things like that. And, they use artwork and music and they use games. And so unschooling is probably the closest approach that I would say to what we do. And I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that, but John Holt coined that term. And it's tough to find the language that suits, I think, our approach. That's why Erin and I are working really hard to sort of do things like create models, because there's just not a lot out there. We say, yes, unschooling is a lifestyle, but I do believe that it would be really lovely to have schools that adopted a lot of this stuff, because one of the other pieces that I would share is that it hasn't been easy for my family to choose home learning, just based on financial reasons and work and support and like creating that balance. And so to have educators like all of you and schools to start to look at learning this way might mean that we will have more access to these things in public settings, which is very much where my work, my commitment to this work is rooted in having these kinds of philosophies more accessible to a wider group of people, to everybody. And I don't even want to say just to a wider, to everyone, if they choose, because part of belonging is having more choice, increasing the ways that we participate in education so that more people feel that sense of belonging.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for asking that question.
I'm also wondering, perhaps, Chelsea, at the beginning, the video that was shared was the Learning in the Woods video. And so We Learn Naturally has offered different learning programs in Southern Ontario. Learning in the Woods was a forest school that we offered. And even calling it a school, I feel a little uncomfortable about even calling it a school, because in my mind, it was so focused on self-directed education that it didn't feel like my understanding of what a school is. So that one took place all outdoors, all in nature. We did another version of that in the local city, Hamilton. And that was also really neat because it was a lot of learning in community. So visiting different organizations in our city, different businesses. The kids would come up with projects that they wanted to pursue, and we would find ways to help them access resources in our community so that they could go in the directions that they were most interested in learning. So although we called ourselves school, most of the people who were participating in the programs were people who were opting out of traditional, maybe traditional is not the right word, conventional schooling, and still wanted that sense of learning in community, but wanted to try something that was a little bit different, like the idea of being able to tap into that innate curiosity. Kids in a group, they continue to learn in all sorts of different environments. And for me as an educator, it was really interesting to have small groups, like a class-sized group of kids, but multi-age. So we had kids who were age 4 up until teenager, all in the same space, learning together, supporting one another. It's a really unique learning environment if what you're used to is conventional school with conventional grades.
I agree with you on that part, that it's a unique learning environment, but I think we also have to understand that it's a unique learning environment now. If we go back hundreds of years and all later, that would not have been in a unique environment. It is unique now, because now the moment you think school, the moment you think, okay, think about, okay, does it have 4 walls? Does it have benches? Which is not true. I mean, school by definition is a place where you go to be educated. The place doesn't have that definition. So I think, yes, I agree on the fact that we need to rework through our roots, and it has been happening since time immemorial, and there's no definite way and there's no right way that one could decide. Like how Chelsea said, there has to be at least a choice has to be there, and then probably they can see, okay, what would work, and then also it's a trial and error, because at the end it's a parent who will take that decision in the beginning, that okay, I know what's best for my child. But once you leave the child in an open environment, the child could make the choices which are more suitable to their understanding, which they know that they are going to enjoy and pursue. And if we do not give that choice, that is an error on our part and not on the child's part. Very strongly.